Well, demonstrations appear to be pushing more change forward, even right here at home. And a big move. The Seattle Police Department says it is banning neck holds and restraints. The department announced a new use of force policy that prohibits using chokeholds or sleeper holds in all circumstances. Departments across the country are announcing similar restrictions in the wake of George Floyd's death.
The vehicle has the person. Just get out.
Now at 11, tension on Capitol Hill. New video giving us a look inside the C.H.O.P zone moments after a deadly shooting.
I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked.
With no end in sight, growing calls tonight for city leaders to take action.
That is not an example of either good government or public safety being protected.
This is the president put state and county leaders on blast.
These are anarchists. These are not protesters.
C.H.O.P News starts now.
And we will get to those stories in just a moment. But first, another night of protest brings traffic to a standstill on I-5 through Seattle. The video on your left shows demonstrators marching along I-5 right near Pine Street just hours ago. While the interstate is now cleared, we have seen protesters marching along I-5 throughout the week. While that march remained peaceful tonight, the scene on Capitol Hill is intensifying after gunfire rang out less than 24 hours ago.
Tonight, our C.H.O.P News crew got a hold of brand new video. It shows the moments a man is raced to the hospital following a shooting in the Capitol Hill occupied protest zone, also known as C.H.O.P. Take a look.
During that disturbing scene, more video shows protesters forcing officers right here out of that zone as they tried to help the two men shot. Now, a 19-year-old man is dead. Another man in critical condition right now.
COMO's Cole Miller just returned from that area. He's live with a look at that brand new video tonight. And Cole, you spoke with the man behind the camera.
Steve, Michelle, we did. We are seeing surveillance cameras. We're seeing police body cameras. We're also seeing video from those who were on the ground when those shots were fired, giving us a look at the immediate aftermath of everything that played out there early this morning. And tonight, we know that no one has been arrested in either of those two shootings. Being rushed to the hospital, the 19-year-old shot near the C.H.O.P early Saturday morning. The sound of gunfire could be heard on surveillance video. Seattle police officers then making their way to that scene. Those protesters telling them that medics from C.H.O.P had already taken that man to the hospital where he later died. Jake Gravbrot was there as all of this was unfolding.
And I was sitting there and heard what was unmistakably gunshots.
His photos show what happened next as he ran towards the commotion.
I immediately saw people scattering to the east and to the north.
And then he saw medics working on that teen.
By that point, the victim was in triage, and what I really noticed was that for about 10 minutes, they were performing CPR, or at least what felt like 10 minutes.
A vigil is now growing near where he was shot, with people lighting candles and leaving behind messages. As it turns out, it was not the only shooting. Just a half hour later, another man was hit. Medics from C.H.O.P also racing him to the hospital, where he remains in intensive care. It's left some outraged, up in arms, that the city has yet to step in.
I'm so mad at the mayor. I feel like she might as well have had her hand on that gun because she's allowing this.
And for those who were there, they say it will have a lasting effect on everyone.
I know that I am incredibly sorry that that happened and that we weren't able to provide a safe space for his life.
And Seattle police say that homicide detectives have been able to carry out their investigation despite some challenges with it being so close to the C.H.O.P zone. At this point, we still don't have a description of the shooter or shooters. Live tonight in Seattle, Cole Miller, C.H.O.P News.
Powerful images and video. Cole, thank you very much. As the community deals with the news of violence in the protest zone, calls are intensifying tonight for city leaders to do more than have discussions about the C.H.O.P area. When asked about the violence, Governor Inslee called for cooperation.
I certainly believe that we have to find a way to simultaneously have the community believe they have a chance to speak and for police services, and importantly, fire services to be able to be provided.
Now, prior to the shooting, Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best said several times that if anyone calls 911, officers will respond. In a news release today, SPD said last night its officers attempted to locate the victims, but was met with that violent crowd that prevented officers safe access.
We have been reaching out all day to city leaders about the violence in C.H.O.P. A few hours ago, a spokesperson for Mayor Durkin's office sent us this short statement. Quote, the mayor has been in close contact with Chief Scoggins, Chief Best, and SPD regarding incidents on Capitol Hill and West Seattle. The primary duty of SFD and SPD is to ensure public safety in all parts of the city. Seattle Councilmember Kashama Sawant also released a statement extending her condolences to the family of the man who died overnight. She also called for everyone to stand in solidarity with the C.H.O.P protest, the defunding of the Seattle Police Department by at least 50%, the immediate release of protesters without charges, and for the East Precinct to be permanently brought into community control.
And we should remind you, this isn't the first time that shots were fired on Capitol Hill. Nicholas Fernandez was charged with felony assault earlier this month after authorities say he drove into a demonstration and shot a protester who charged up to his window. His attorney says Fernandez fired his gun to protect himself. However, prosecutors claim he provoked that attack.
Ever since C.H.O.P was established, some neighbors have said they don't mind it and actually support the movement, but some are not happy with what C.H.O.P has turned into.
This is one of the most liberal neighborhoods in the city that supports movements like this 100%. And we don't even know how to do that now. You need to let people know that there is a limit. We need to do our job, which is to keep property safe and keep people safe.
Just last night, Como told you a group of Capitol Hill property owners wrote a letter to the mayor and city council members. It read in part, quote, we need your help and we need the city to enforce its laws.
Steve, that brings us to our Twitter poll question tonight. We've been asking this all day long. Do you think the city of Seattle should move in right now to end the Capitol Hill occupied protest, or C.H.O.P? More than 11,200 people have voted so far. Just over 61% say yes, and nearly 39% say no. You can cast your vote right now on our Como News Twitter page.
New at 11 tonight, the Seattle Police Department's West Precinct is almost clean again after the front of the building was tagged several times during demonstrations last night. To compare, on the left of your screen here is what the precinct looked like last night, with messages written in red and green spray paint. On the right is video Como shot just a few hours ago. Police say a number of people were seen spray painting the walls. It is not clear at this point if anyone was arrested.
In Tulsa, Oklahoma, thousands packed the Bank of Oklahoma Center for President Trump's re-election campaign rally. Despite the crowds, the arena was not filled to capacity. This was Mr. Trump's first rally since we entered the global pandemic for COVID-19. During that rally tonight, the president took aim right here at Seattle, at city leaders specifically, and the protesters occupying an area of Capitol Hill right now.
In Seattle, the Democrat mayor and the Democrat City Council have surrendered control of 6 city blocks to an anarchist mob. These are anarchists. These are not protesters. You listen to the fake news, they say, oh, the protesters were lovely. Could you imagine if people just even slightly to the right tried to take over Seattle? Governor Inslee ought to get his act together, get in there. I'll help you. I'll do whatever you want. I'm waiting for a call. I would love to do it. I would love to do it. It'll take less than an hour, and it'll all be over with, and you'll have your city back.
We reached out to Mayor Durkin and Governor Inslee's offices tonight about those comments. We have not yet heard back from either. Protesters continue to gather in Tulsa tonight, even after the president left the state. Earlier today, Black Lives Matter activists gathered outside the center where the rally was being held. During his speech tonight, the president called those protesters, quote unquote, maniacs.
Look what happened tonight. Look at what happened tonight. Law enforcement said, sir, they can't be outside. It's too dangerous. We had a bunch of maniacs come and sort of attack our city. The mayor and the governor did a great job, but they were very violent people.
President went on. He called activists who want to defund police departments stone cold crazy.
Just hours before that rally, 6 of President Trump's campaign staff members tested positive for the coronavirus. The president's campaign said all staff is tested for COVID-19 prior to events. Hundreds of people were also reportedly tested for the virus at the event. The Trump campaign says no coronavirus positive staffers were at the rally or near attendees. Despite those positive tests, President Trump said he told officials in his administration to slow down coronavirus testing because of the rising number of cases in America. During his rally in Tulsa tonight, the president even used a racist term to describe the virus.
When you do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people, you're going to find more cases. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please. By the way, it's a disease, without question, has more names than any disease in history. I can name Kung Flu. I can name 19 different versions of names.
After the president's comment, an administration official said Trump was, quote, obviously joking.
10. A deadly shooting inside a now infamous autonomous zone within Seattle is changing the conversation surrounding what's happening within that 6-block area of Capitol Hill. We're getting an up-close look as police officers are essentially pushed out of what's become known as the C.H.O.P as they responded to that early morning shooting near Cal Anderson Park. Here's a live look now over the C.H.O.P hours after a 19-year-old man was shot and killed inside this self-proclaimed police-free zone. Another man was also hurt by it by gunfire, which all happened before 3 o'clock this morning. That second man remains in the hospital tonight with life-threatening injuries. No one is in custody. And Seattle's elected leaders have little to say publicly about the outburst of violence in the heart of the city. You're watching the news at 10. I'm Hannah Kim. Both of those victims were taken to the hospital not by first responders in an ambulance, but rather by C.H.O.P medics in private cars. Here's a timeline of how it all unfolded.
Multiple cameras in the Capitol Hill area record several gunshots ringing out at 2:18 in the morning. People on the field at Cal Anderson Park run from the area of the gunfire, which Seattle police say is along 10th Avenue and East Pine Street. More people within the C.H.O.P can be seen on camera running along the streets bordering the park. Then around 2:25, Seattle police crews arrive and initially enter the scene moments later.
Please move out of the way so we can get to the victim. All we're trying to do is get to the victim and provide them aid. Please allow us to get fire into the area to provide them aid.
SPD released this video this evening of the officers' response, giving us a first-hand look at the tensions at the scene. Officers carry shields and are wearing protective gear as they make their way into the C.H.O.P.
Stop! SPD, stop!
What's going on? Put your guns down!
Protesters eventually come face-to-face with the responding officers, with video posted to Facebook showing another vantage point of the encounter.
But now you got another situation because you got the police who are now not necessarily surrounded, but there's definitely there's a lot of people out here.
Seattle fire medics who are staging nearby cannot move into the area without an established police presence. And while officers struggle to gain access to the scene, the first victim instead arrives at Harborview Medical Center at 2:42 a.m. He is pronounced dead 11 minutes later. Both police and fire crews are still on scene when the second victim also arrives at Harborview in a private car at 3:06 in the morning.
Get your vehicle and go.
The last part of the release video shows officers getting in their vehicles and rushing out of the area. SPD tells us that those officers at that moment did not know where the shooting victims were exactly, but that they left because they felt unsafe and worried things would escalate at the C.H.O.P. We also know that for many, there are a lot of questions regarding if and how this occupied area will be addressed. However, there are little to no answers from city officials at this moment. Q13's A.J. Janival spent the day in the occupied area and has more on what people there are asking tonight.
Flowers and candles now line the street where family members say 19-year-old Lorenzo Anderson died. I spoke to his sister off camera. The family's heart is broken. People who live in this occupied area now have questions. I spoke to a couple people who live in an apartment right on Pine in the occupied zone. They tell me they're supportive of the movement, but question what this occupation is turning into. In a few hours inside the area, I witnessed several violent outbursts from people. Motives of these actions unknown.
Back up! Don't do that!
And the only people responding are on-site security.
We as a community need to come together to find a solution here because it's not getting done. How many more people need to get killed?
Mike Solon is a member of the Seattle Police Department. He's also the president of the Seattle Police Officers Guild.
Please move out of the way so we can get to the victim. All we're trying to do is get to the victim and provide them aid.
He tells me without officers getting into the crime scene on Friday, there's no investigation.
Where's the justice for that homicide victim? Where's the justice for their family? Where's the justice for the Seattle community?
The mayor's office released a statement Saturday that reads, in full, the mayor has been in close contact with Chief Scoggins, Chief Best, and SPD regarding incidents on Capitol Hill and West Seattle. The primary duty of SFD and SPD is to ensure public safety in all parts of the city. The mayor, the police chief, and the fire chief did not make themselves available to speak on camera Saturday following this fatal shooting. Reporting in Seattle, AJ Janavel, Q13 News.
So while Seattle leaders have said little of significance about the chaos, Governor Inslee did address the overnight violence after being asked about it by reporters. Here's the governor's response to a question about his role when it comes to command inside the C.H.O.P.
My role is supportive, if you will, to the entire city of Seattle and its democratically elected government. Obviously, I am not in charge of the Seattle Police Department or the Seattle Fire Department or the Seattle Department of Transportation. So those are things under the control of the Seattle city government. But we can play a role in supporting things that Seattle asked for. As far as what happens in the precinct, that's really a decision for the city of Seattle. I just know this. We have to have a way to provide police services and fire services in that area.
Well, we're going to keep pressing for elected leaders for answers and keep you updated on what we hear.
Now at 10, chaos at the protest zone on Capitol Hill. Tonight, the search for who's behind a deadly shooting. One person is dead and another has been critically injured by gunfire at the C.H.O.P, or the Capitol Hill organized protest. King 5's Tony Black tells us about the drama which unfolded early this morning.
Seattle police are investigating a fatal shooting within the Cap Hill occupied protest zone that happened Saturday. Video from inside the C.H.O.P zone shows a busy scene at 2:30 in the morning. A 19-year-old was killed, and another man was also reportedly shot and taken to the hospital.
There's a lot of people out here.
Alex Bennett, a former nurse, says she was walking her dog nearby when she saw one of the victims.
And I saw one gunshot wound on his arm, so I took off my sweatshirt and tied it around his arm above where the gunshot wound was so I could make a tourniquet to try to keep the bleeding down.
Bennett says she heard somebody say they called 911, but were told paramedics won't come because police were being blocked from entering. Bennett says she supports the protest, but believes time was lost.
If an ambulance could have come, he would have been there a lot sooner, and he, I think, would probably have been in a lot better shape.
Get your vehicle and go!
The Seattle Fire Department offered a timeline of events, saying after the first 911 call at 2:19 a.m., they and the Seattle Police Department attempted to enter the area at 2:26 a.m., but were met by protesters, who Seattle police in their release said were violent. Seattle police also said they were told C.H.O.P medics transported the first victim to the hospital, where he had died. Nearly 40 minutes later, multiple 911 calls came in to report another victim. Officers were already on scene, but that victim too was taken to the hospital by someone else.
Move out of the way!
Seattle police say detectives are still doing an investigation despite the challenges, and at this time they do not have any description for a suspect.
I heard some arguments about, well, people are hurt, we need to let We need to let the paramedics transport them. And I heard, again, loud calls and chants to stand ground, to not let anybody in the C.H.O.P.
Mary Ellen Donnelly lives across the street and heard the gunshots and watched the scene evolve. She has begged the lawmakers to intervene for everyone's safety.
We need help. We need help. I mean, we live here. We need to not be ignored. There needs to be a dialogue. And I think the initial protest has gotten lost.
Tony Black, King 5 News.
Much like the woman you just heard from, some people who live inside that 6-block radius of the so-called C.H.O.P want the mayor to do more to make sure they stay safe. A note from residents inside of a building right across the street from the East Precinct said in a letter to the mayor, while they feel safer now that the police presence is gone, they, quote, have legitimate concerns about safety and security as permanent residents within the occupied zone, especially given that organizers' demands have not been met and resolution is not within sight, end quote. That letter also said that the city has not communicated any plans about the future.